Is there a limit to how much money you can get in a game of balloons? And what happens when we get there? Do we go back to zero? Will the game crash or something else? Well, there's only one way to find out. So I booted up the game and started farming. This started off pretty standard, but if we're going to get to a number so astronomically high that it'll break the game, we're going to have to use a special trick. You see, there's a bug that lets us place an infinite amount of towers. This is called the pool stacking glitch, and we're going to abuse it to print money faster than the US government. For whatever reason, you can place monkeys on top of one another if you make a tower of 25 pools or more. I did this in a previous video where we made a monkeyopolis so big the game froze, but we didn't cap out our money. There were a ton of comments though that said $2,147,483,647 is the max that BTD6 will let you have. This makes a ton of sense because that's the integer limit in coding. If you don't know, here's some computer science for you. Computers store information in ones and zeros, and each one of these ones or zeros is called a bit. Integers are given 32 bits, or 32 ones and zeros for a specific value. The first bit is used to tell if the number is positive or negative, and the remaining 31 are used for the number's magnitude. So, the largest number an integer can be is if the first bit equals 0 and the next 31 are all ones. If this happens, we get that positive 2.1 billion number we said before. Now, in a normal boss run, we make anywhere from $3 to $7 million, and that's basically the most money we'd ever need for a challenge in BTD6. But today, we need to hit over $2 billion, and in the history of my account, I have only made $3 billion total. So we need to almost double my lifelong cash generation in one run. Let's do this. On top of the stack of portable lakes, I put down several farms and druids. The reason for this is because middle path druids have an ability that generates more money for every farm inside their range. Normally, this isn't the best because you can only fit a few farms inside their range, but when we can place monkeys on top of each other, this gets way too strong. We spent about 125k on druids and farms, and the first round we used their abilities, we made $169,000. The more money we made, the more druids and farms we placed, and they were instantly paying themselves off. Pretty soon, we were making hundreds of thousands of dollars per round as we had hundreds of druids and farms all inside the range of each other. We started this farming technique on round 51, and by the end of 54, we hit $1.2 million. This is already an insane amount of money, but it's only 0.05% of the way to our goal. More druids and more farms is what we need. Another perk of placing druids is that they provide a ton of defense, especially when you're placing as many as I am. And they all give +1 life at the end of every round, so not only will we try to hit the money cap this game, but also see if there's a maximum number of lives we can get as well. Fast forward to round 101, and we're sitting at $281 million. We got an energizer to reduce our cooldowns, and we've placed so many druids that the top of the pool is shrouded in darkness. And to make it even cooler, we placed an Avatar of Wrath and 5 Poplas up there to buff all the druids with extra attack speed and pierce, and this caused orange lightning to be shooting around this dark cloud. There's just one problem. We're only 1/10 of the way to our goal, and we're already facing DDTs and ZLMGs every round. We needed to prepare for this to go deep into free play. So I got 3 tier 5 boomerangs to start farming pops for a future Paragon. It's funny that even when we max this guy out, it'll only be about $1 million, which is usually super expensive, but today it's just a drop in the bucket. Now, I've been at this for over an hour and hundreds of druid abilities have been used, but I don't want you guys to be worried about my fingers or the keyboard. Just know that I set up a macro to spam this ability. That way, I didn't have to mash the number 3 a couple hundred times per round. Instead, I just had my computer press it for me 10 times a second every second. We were gaining 189 lives per round at this time, most of which from our druids. Now, I've never had life generation like this, as we normally can't fit this many druids, but we quickly found out what the limit on lives is. I knew that after 1,000 lives, everything that generates lives only works at 10% efficiency, but because druids only gain 1 life per round, we didn't notice a slowdown in life generation at all. In fact, we hit the cap of 5,000 lives on round 110. And we got to keep our mana shield at 25. But the end of round 135 is where we hit our first $1 billion. By far the most money I've ever seen in a Bloons game. and still, our druids and boomerangs were defending just fine. The only real issue here was time, because the game was moving so slow due to how many towers I had on top of the pools. It was moving at most 1/5 the normal speed. Not a real problem, just boring for me. Round 140, we made our first Paragon, dumping over $1 million into it, and it gave us a degree 74 glaive dominus. Then we placed down some wizards to start getting pops for when we build the Magus Perfectus. We decided to do this on round 172 as the bads were just getting a little too far for comfort. Still not really an issue, but I didn't want to accidentally leak and lose a few hours into the run. Even though we had 5,000 lives, it'll only take a blimp or two to take us out of the game. Real quick, if you do purchase anything in-game, like monkey money for portable lakes to do this glitch, please make sure to use creator code Hbomb to help me out. It means a lot. This set us back about $3 million bucks, which is like a couple seconds of farming, but locked up our defenses for the rest of the game. Without having to worry about that, we farmed on, straight to round 193, where we were finally approaching the 2.1 billion number. And just before we popped the final 2 bads of the round, we passed the integer limit. We went from 2,147,483,647 to negative $2,147,483,648, which means our binary number of 0 followed by 31 ones flipped over to a 1 followed by 31 zeros. In normal counting, this makes sense as we're just adding an order of magnitude, but this breaks integers as that first digit is for marking positive or negative, not a number's magnitude. And the reason this isn't -0, which is what it looks like it should be, is because when a number's negative, it's common notation to use 2's complement, which just means the first bit is a 1, marking that it's negative, and then you flip every other bit. This makes it a lot more complicated for humans to read, but makes operations like addition, subtraction, and multiplication identical to those that have unsigned binary numbers. So, this number of 1 followed by 31 zeros is the largest negative number an integer can hold, or I guess the smallest since it's negative. Anyway, now that we're negative money, what happens? Well, the game just completely stopped counting. Even when we generated more money, we just stayed at this massive negative number. We did not work back towards 0. The funny thing though, was that it acted like we had infinite money to work with. I could build whatever I wanted, including an expensive sun temple, which we did just to get rid of all the monkeys on top of the pools to make my game stop lagging. One thing that didn't work though, was the Paragon slider. Although I could place as many expensive aces as I wanted, we could not put any money into the slider, which really limited how high of a degree we could make this Goliath Doom ship. It did still let us click the do it button though, which awarded us a degree 43 Asagon. Just to make sure, we did this again with the Apex Plasma Master, and we could afford every monkey, but the slider wouldn't move. But we continued on, getting some very expensive towers and beating the next few rounds. We stayed at negative $2.1 billion and 5,000 lives the entire time, and the game continued on like normal. We even got an insta monkey for beating round 200. The only thing that broke was it stopped counting money altogether and acted like we had infinite money except when we were using the Paragon slider. Also, 2D was making fun of me for never asking for subs and that only 10% of you guys are subscribed, so I think we should try to pass him. We're only like 1.4 million subs behind him, so I think we can catch up pretty quick. But that's what happens when you get more money than BTD6 knows what to do with.